The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 200. Brady Hoke thinks Michigan is close to championship level and acknowledges the pressure to win. And Michigan basketball looks to the future. Is it a rebuilding or a reloading year? That and more on this week's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and Happy Easter. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. On today's show, football beat writer Nick Baumgardner from Mlive will join us on the Michigan Gameday segment. We'll find out what Nick gleaned from spring practice and get his take on where Team 135 is heading into summer workouts. Nick and I also discussed the Michigan Student Government's report on how the university is handling sexual misconduct issues, and we even had Nick put on his old basketball beat writer's hat and give us his thoughts on Michigan hoops moving forward. Before we get to that, let's start with a few Wolverine news and notes for this week. Earlier this week, Brady Hoke told Michigan beat writers he thinks his team is close to competing for a Big Ten title. Despite what we saw in the spring game, Brady believes there is much improvement with this team at every position group. He does acknowledge the pressure to win, and he said that pressure comes with the job. He expects that. Still, he is very optimistic about this group and is happy with the emerging leadership on the team. Shortly after we publish the show today, we'll learn about the future of two Wolverines. Tuesday afternoon, Nick Stauskas and Glenn Robinson III will be holding a press conference. Most experts believe both players will declare for the draft. Mitch McGarry is still mulling over his decision and has not set a date to announce his future plans. We'll keep you posted on that. So it looks like a rebuilding year for Michigan hoops. There are 4 new freshmen on the way, and there's still plenty of talent around. Karis LeVert, Derek Walton Jr., and Zach Irvin will all be back next season. If Mitch McGarry decides to stay, things will look even brighter. I just have a hunch that John Beilein will do what he always does and put together another solid winter of Michigan basketball for us. Of course, there's going to be a new cast, but Coach B seems to thrive in putting the pieces together each season, so I think I'm already looking forward to that. Coming up next on our Michigan Game Day segment, I'll be joined by football beat writer Nick Baumgardner from Mlive, so stick around for that. Here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on Michigan Game Day this week, football beat writer Nick Baumgardner from Mlive. Great to have you back, Nick.
Good to be here, Mike.
Well, of course, a week ago, spring practice wrapped up, and we're spending a couple of weeks, looking back at that, getting the take of the beat writers as to where they think this team is. And Nick, one thing we know for sure is all of the beat writers have limited access during spring practice. Why don't you explain to our listeners and your readers what exactly is limited access for Michigan football?
Oh, man, where do we start? Actually, as far as practice goes, outside of the spring game itself, which was that wasn't much of a game. It was more of a practice with 45 minutes of scrimmage. Outside of that, we don't get to see any practice. Michigan doesn't allow us into any, weekly practices. That goes throughout the season as well. So we don't see practice. We don't see any of that stuff as far as access goes. We did talk, however, to a ton of players this spring, more than we maybe have at any time of Brady Hoke's tenure during the offseason. So we talked to a lot of guys this year, so that was definitely helpful to kind of get their sense on where the team's at and everything else. We're able to get a lot of insights from that. But as far as the on-field stuff goes, we kind of have to take their word for it and then see what we can see and kind of glean what we can glean from that spring game itself, because we don't get to see any practices.
Well, given the fact that you did get some access to the players, as you just mentioned, did you come away with any kind of a feeling after talking to them, maybe where this team is right now heading into summer drills?
Yeah, I think there was a couple different things. I think number one, I think they were all especially offensively. I think they all sort of admitted that early in spring camp it was a bit of a struggle to kind of adjust to a new system, which is expected. You kind of expect that. It's a new deal, new things for everyone. I think they made some big strides by the end of camp. Guys seemed less. I don't want to say if they were ever overwhelmed, but they seemed more comfortable with the whole thing. So that was one. I think the offensive line. I think even if you ask them, admittedly, they would tell you they still have a ways to go. Which, I don't know if that's expected or not. It's definitely not good. I think Brady Hoke even said at the end of camp, he was pretty honest about his line all camp that he still doesn't know who the top 5 guys are. Obviously still waiting for Eric Magnuson to get healthy. And they're still looking at possible adding a transfer from Alabama. So, they don't really know yet who the 5 guys will be and where they'll be at. They played a lot of different guys at a lot of different positions. A lot of guys on the offensive line this spring played at least 2 spots. So that's, they're trying to figure out any way they can to get the best 5 guys on the field and make sure that position is stable, because that thing holds the key to pretty much everything. And then the last, I guess, real impression that I got, and this is from talking to the guys, that this team does to me, at least early anyway, they do seem to be closer as a unit. They seem to have better chemistry this year. Not saying last year's was terrible, but at times it wasn't great. I think that came through, and I think that was pretty obvious, and some of the guys even admitted it at the end of the year. I think that they've sort of changed the way they go about leading from the top. I think the seniors have been more, they've embraced the younger guys a little bit more and let them have a voice. So I think the team is closer from top to bottom. I think they're a little tighter. And I think if they stay that way, I think they'll we've talked about finding the way to, figure out 4 or 5 missed points that you had. Those types of things, if you stay together as a team and kind of continue to fight for each other, you can make up some of those. So I think early on, anyway, they're doing a good job of that moving into the summer.
Yeah, sticking with that for just a minute, Nick, I know last year, late in the season, when Frank Clark made his statement that there was a point in the season, I'm just paraphrasing him now, that the team stopped playing for each other. And, of course, that goes back to leadership. We thought we had a really fine leadership class last year, but we don't have many seniors this year. So where do you think that leadership, at least, what are the players saying? Where is that coming from?
Well, they still have Jake Ryan, who was a captain on last year's team. Devin Gardner is obviously a leader, even though he wasn't a captain last year. Frank himself is looked at as a leader now. Frank's grown up an awful lot in his time at Michigan. But more than that, all of those guys, all 3 of those guys to a man, have said that they also want guys in the junior class and sophomore class, and even some of the younger freshmen that are playing. They want them to be leaders as well, and they want them to have voice on the team. They don't want anybody to be afraid to speak up if they feel like they need to say something. They don't want anybody to be afraid to voice a concern for fear of being, told that whatever their concern was doesn't matter. I think that basically the focal or the takeaway I got was last year you had some very strong voices on the team, but there was only a few of them, and it was only a few guys that were basically ever comfortable enough to kind of speak up and say say what they wanted to say. Anyone else who maybe wanted to do it either felt like they couldn't or wasn't their place. I think these guys want to make sure that everybody feels like it's everyone's place to say whatever they feel, because they're all in this together. They all went 7-6 last year, and they all want to win. So I think this is more going to be. I think they want it to be more of a team-based leadership group instead of maybe 2 or 3 guys, if that makes sense. Well, good. We're going to need that moving forward this year. When you look back at the spring practice, though, Nick, I think if you could pick a position group that the fans wanted to see progress from and kept their eyes on, it was that offensive line group. And, I keep thinking, I want to see that too, but are we expecting too much in the way of improvement, given the fact that the team only had 15 practices and we expect them to morph into a cohesive unit over that time period? Oh yeah. I think people were probably expecting way too much from that group, considering they are still I know people don't like to hear it, but they are still very young. They still got a lot of guys in there who, played for the first time last year, sophomores and redshirt freshmen, and even a true freshman in Mason Cole. So, they were bad at the end of last year. They had a long way to go at the end of last year, and to think that they would have completely turned a corner by, practice 15 of spring is probably unfair. There were things they did that looked a little bit better. There were things they did that looked about the same. They've got a long way to go. And a lot of that is confidence, a lot of that is cohesion and just playing together, and communication, I think, is the biggest thing. This offensive line, really for the last 2 years, not just last year, but the year before, people forget, wasn't very good in 2012 either, and they just never ever felt like they were on the same page. And to me, that I always go back to this. It starts in the middle with your center. Your center has to be able to make sure everyone's on the same page. They have to communicate and make sure everyone knows what they're doing. And I think Doug Nussmeier said it best at one point. I've never heard anyone say this before, but he said, if we're going to make a mistake, let's all make the same mistake so that, we're at least getting maybe 3 yards on a play instead of losing 5, which makes perfect sense to me, because if you're all on the same page and you're all doing the same thing and somebody gets it wrong, that probably means you're all doing it wrong, but at least you're all going to the same spot and somebody's not getting dropped for a 15-yard loss. So I think hammering home the fact to those guys, to the younger guys, that if you lose 4 or 5 yards on second down, you're punting almost every time. That drive is dead almost every time. And I think that those sacks and those negative plays that just happened all over the place last year. I think the importance and emphasis on that just cannot happen again. We don't have to be a dominating rushing team that racks up 500 yards a game, but we cannot allow all these negative plays. I think that's the biggest focus right now, getting them on the same page and making them understand that the negative stuff, the negative plays are just game killers. They will lose you football games every single time. They're as bad as turnovers in some instances, and I think that's where they're at.
Well, we heard from the players that Coach Nussmeier has simplified the offense in some ways, and that he brings a ton of energy to practice and in the meeting rooms. What is your early impression of Coach Nussmeier?
Yeah, very hands-on guy, as we all expected. The people that I spoke with before he got here had said that he's a very player-friendly coach in that he's a former quarterback himself. So for the quarterbacks are concerned, I think he'd be a great help for them because he can get down there with them. He's been through what they've gone through before. He can be sort of in their drills and sort of show them, exactly what he means when he says he wants something done. I think the fact that he's a coach who's never been fired anywhere or let go. His offense hasn't failed at a place where they've shoved him out the door. I think he's one of these coaches that continues to move up in jobs. I think that he's found success in different environments. I'm not sure if he's taken on a rebuilding job as far as an offensive line or something like that goes to this degree. He probably has, probably not under this much pressure, but he's succeeded pretty much everywhere he's been in making whatever unit as good or better than he found it when he left. So, I think that attention to detail. I think he understands, how to move the football. I think he understands quarterback situation from pro style stuff. I just think that it's a basic deal. It's basic football, more or less. It's not, I'm sitting in a room with a notebook creating all these special plays that are going to be so unique and no one's going to know what hit them. We're just going to do what the defense gives us. We're going to take what's there and we're going to move the football and score points, because that's basic football. And I think that's been his philosophy since he got here. That's been what he's talked about. I think this team needs that. They needed to be simplified. They needed to just start moving the football again and stop worrying about all these special packages and everything else that happened in the last, with Borges. I mean, sometimes it got so out of control that you didn't know what was happening. So I think they need to be kind of harnessed in, especially a young group, and kind of refocused. And I think this is what he's done this spring, and it's been good for him.
Well, early this year, Brady said there was a quarterback competition. He said that again last week after spring practice ended, which I think is very good for Devin to keep hearing him say that. All that said, it is still hard to see Devin, even though he did not have a great spring practice game, still hard to see him losing that starting job, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and he's ahead of the other two at this point, other three really, in Spate, Morris, and then Bellamy. But I mean, he's ahead of them based on experience, based on he's been in the fire before, he's done all that stuff, and he's adjusted to new offenses. I mean, this is his third different offense in 5 years, so he's done this before as far as the transition goes. He's ahead of the curve, no doubt about it. But like you said, Mike, it's important, I think, as well, for him to continue to hear from Hoke that this thing isn't over, and you need to continue to push yourself, because Brady even said he did not have a good performance in the spring game, and that's not acceptable. You need to be better than that. So, I remember I asked what would he have to do to kind of put this to bed to have you stop saying this is a competition, and he said he just needs to be more consistent. Day in and day out, he needs to end it by being consistent and leaving no doubt, basically, and stop leaving the door open for some of those guys, because I think that's where they're at. They're saying, Devin obviously is the guy going into the fall that it's certainly his job to lose. But, if Shane Morris, or probably Shane Morris would be the only one in realistic terms, if Shane Morris has a terrific summer and comes back to change quarterback and is ready to go, and all of a sudden he's pushing, Devin could lose the job. I think that's the statement they want to hammer home to him, that it's probably your job, but you certainly could lose it. And, I'm sure you don't want that to happen, so continue to work hard and continue to be focused. And I think Devin's doing those things. You said all the right things. He seems to enjoy the competition, so I think it's good for all parties involved. Also good for Shane Morris. I think you want to keep that character for him. You don't want to just, tell him, hey, you're just going to have to sit another year, and just have that be your mentality all summer. That's not going to get anybody anywhere. So I think it's good for all parties involved, and I think as long as they continue to head forward, it'll be beneficial.
Our guest here on Michigan Game Day this week is Michigan football beat writer Nick Baumgardner from Mlive as we discuss the spring practice and a few other items. Nick, after the spring game, I think for most of us it's easier to imagine the defense making great strides this fall. It looks like Coach Madison probably has more pieces to work with than he's had through his first 3 years here, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're more athletic in a lot of spots, more explosive in a lot of spots, and I think above maybe anything else, I think he's got their attention again completely. In that, last year really wasn't good enough, especially at the end of the year. I think those guys know that, and I think Greg has been able to kind of, refocus them, kind of grab them in and say, look, that's not even remotely acceptable. Even though the offense was a mess at times, this defense should have been good enough to kind of carry them through some tough spots and win them some games. And I think that's and I think that's what's going to happen here again early in the season. I think, you're going to have to almost allow this offense a little bit of time to sort of gel together. And with that, you have enough guys on defense, you have enough explosive players, you have enough guys with experience coming back, that your defense should be good enough to carry you through some rough offensive times and win you some football games. And I think that Madison, at this point, is maybe even putting that on their shoulders, saying, you need to be better. You need to help out your, the other side of the ball, make sure that they get enough time. Sort of what Michigan State was able to do last year, where their defense carried them early in the season, the offense figured it out eventually, and really no harm was done. So I think he's got their attention again. I think he's got a lot of experience back. They made some adjustments. At linebacker there, Jake Ryan's in the middle. I think they were excited about how that worked out. I think that the defensive line, I think they're excited about what Frank Clark might be able to do. Some of the guys inside are more explosive. So, and they still haven't brought in Peppers yet either. So once he gets here, that'll change a lot in the secondary. I think Greg Madison wants to be more aggressive this year. They want to be similar to what they were in 2011, which was a team that blitzed a lot, and they played a lot of press stuff outside and kind of forced the issue. They've said they wanted to do that for the last couple of years. I think this year, watching the spring game, they played a ton of press coverage, and even if guys got burnt, they got burnt, whatever. They still sent some basic pressure packages, and it seemed to work. So I think that's going to be the goal, or that's going to be the attitude going into it, that they're going to be the team that punches first instead of sits back and waits for somebody to hit them, and I think that's beneficial. We'll just see how it pans out.
Well, Nick, even though Dave Brandon and the athletic department put on what's really a fun, fan-friendly day that happens to include a football practice, when the sun set on the big house and spring practice concluded a week ago, I think it's fair to say most of us still really have no idea what we're going to get in the way of a finished product this fall, do we?
No, it's just too hard to gauge it at this point. I mean, there's too many unanswered questions. The offense, the line itself. I mean, that holds the key to everything. I mean, if they can't make a giant leap throughout the summer and throughout the fall, and at some point just become a group that can start pushing people around and move the football, then the offense is really going to struggle. I don't know if it'll be as bad as it was last year as far as, you're gaining negative 28 yards or 55 yards. I don't know if it'll ever be that bad again. But, but if it's not a threat, then obviously you're going to have some situations and some issues. So we don't know there, what kind of quarterback is Devin Gardner going to be. If he indeed finishes this off and wins the job, is he going to finally get rid of those little mistakes that end up costing you football games? And is he going to play like he did, at the end of the season against Ohio State for a full year? We don't know that yet. We also don't know about the defense. We've liked what we've seen, I guess, to a degree, from their progress. I mean, it's been positive for them. Like what they're saying, that's been positive for them, but we'll have to see it. They'll have to do it for 12 games, and you're just going to have playmakers step up and start making plays. You look back at Hoke's first season here that was very successful. You had guys like Merton that just made plays every game all year long. Ryan Van Bergen made plays every game all year long. Those guys just made plays every Saturday. Even if it wasn't perfect, guys like that made enough plays to win football games. And the last 2 years, other than Denard before he got hurt, we haven't seen anybody do that. So maybe Jake Ryan to a degree, but that's about it. No one else has stepped up and really just taken a game by the throat and won it for Michigan, and that hasn't happened in a long time. And guys are going to have to just basically grow up. I mean, that's the end of the day deal here, is that the youth on this team has to just turn into football players. You can't keep calling them young guys anymore. They have to grow up and be real players. Talent-wise, would say that they can be. They just have to go out and do it, and that's why we don't know yet. We have to wait and see on a lot of guys. If everything clicks, this could be a really, really good football team. If not, they could struggle quite a bit. So it's all up in the air right now.
And I think for all of those reasons, a lot of the fans, especially after the last 2 years, are really uneasy. But do you sense any urgency from Brady and his staff? And I know you had more access to them this spring, but any more urgency in getting this thing back on track this season?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that, we can sit there and overanalyze the Borges firing all we want, but the fact that it happened, the fact that you removed your offensive coordinator, brought in a new offensive coordinator to fix what was wrong, was step one. Step two is that you completely shuffled your entire defensive staff. They didn't let anybody go, but you changed responsibilities all across the board. They moved guys. They took guys from defense and moved them to offense. They've moved guys. They've moved positions. They've done a lot of things, whatever they can, to try and make this thing work. I mean, I think there's a huge sense of urgency, within the staff. Now, I don't know if that sense of urgency is we're fighting for our jobs here. I don't know if that's quite where he's at, because I don't think that Dave Brandon has come out and said that needs to be something that anyone's thinking about. But at the end of the day, they did go 7-6 at Michigan, which is just wholly unacceptable with the amount of resources and money this place has and everything that they put into this program. So I think that there is a huge sense of urgency with Hoke and his staff. I think they're trying to push that into the players and saying, 7-6, 8-5 isn't good enough. The fact that they haven't won a Big Ten title in a decade isn't good enough. Michigan football hasn't been good enough in a long time, and I think that's caught up with this staff. I think that they have had a sense of urgency. I think guys are on their toes a little bit more, and they're not as comfortable. I think in 2012 they were pretty comfortable, if we're going to be honest and look back on it. 2011 went better than anybody thought it would. And I think a lot of guys were pretty comfortable in 2012. I think they were even comfortable last year. I don't sense that this year. I sense it feels a little bit more like the 2011 off season a little bit, where nothing's really good enough, and they're focusing on the little things day in and day out, even if that sounds boring. They have a long way to go, and guys aren't admitting anything else. So it sounds a little bit like that year, but we'll see if it plays out that way as well.
In the meantime, Sunday in Mlive, you did a story regarding the Michigan student government releasing their report on how the university handled its new student sexual misconduct policy. Since the Brendan Gibbons story first broke, it seemed to simmer below the surface after it initially broke. Is this story, though, about to maybe break into something much bigger?
I don't know. The U.S. Department of Education's Student Affairs Board, whatever it is, I'm not sure the exact title, they're doing an investigation this week similar to what the student government did, looking at, and this is a nationwide thing. They're doing this at a lot of schools, looking at how they investigated sexual misconduct policies and all those types of things. I'm not real sure. They won't release details on the case. We've asked numerous times, and they've stood behind federal student privacy laws on that. So my take from the football side of things has always been, a lot of this to me is still a university issue, and that was some of the story last night, which was that the student government board had found that the university's handling of this case, which seemed to take forever, far too long, seemed to be sort of a norm, in that they didn't have enough people on staff to kind of handle these types of complaints from sexual misconduct. So I think that was the crux of their report. They also found from what they're suggesting, or their evidence suggests, that Brady Hoke was aware of the investigation into this in August. He was aware. He would have been aware, based on their evidence, in November, when the board found that Gibbons was responsible for the situation. Then he would have also been aware in December, when they finally made their ruling and said that he was expelled. So that his comments about a family matter or family issue, whatever it was, in Arizona were basically, you could construe them as false. If you wanted to play the other side of it, you could say he was dealing with a family matter, and that was his expulsion. So I don't know. It's hard for me to say, unless something comes up that says that the university tampered with something or tried to cover something up, which hasn't really been claimed at this point, or accused, or no one's accused that of anyone really at this point yet. So unless that happens, I don't know how much larger it can get. I think what the good thing here, if there is a good thing in it, is that it's caused awareness to what seemed to be a broken policy. The university now, it seems to be anyway, taking strides toward kind of fixing that and making this kind of an easier thing to handle campus-wide, not just in athletics, but across campus in general, which if there's a positive you take out of it, it's that was kind of brought to light. And maybe that'll change things going forward. If something else like this happens again, then it won't happen again, I guess.
If there's a negative, it's that the university, as far as publicity and the athletic department, I mean, this is not what they would like. But it doesn't seem like it's a story that's going to go away anytime soon, does it?
No, it's not. It's definitely not going to go away. I mean, it wasn't going to go away. 2 weeks after the whole thing was announced or broke, and I think the Daily wrote it in January. So. No, I mean this is a situation that wasn't good. It's a bad deal for everyone involved, obviously, and whenever this sort of thing happens, it's just not. You can't just hide behind it, bury your head in sand, and hope that it just passes on down the river. I mean, things are going to happen. Things are going to come out. It's not going to go away. At some point we'll have what we have, and we'll know what we know, and that'll be that. But we're not quite there yet, and I guess until we get to that point, until this information is at least found to a point where we can say without too much hesitation, here's what happened, here's who knew, and here's who did what about it, then that'll be that. But right now it's still way too much of it's still unknown, I guess, to make too many sweeping judgments on it.
Now we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out, as with many things. Mm-hmm. One final question for you, Nick. I want you to put your old basketball beat writer hat on for just a moment. Waiting for announcements from Nick Stauskas, Mitch McGarry, Glenn Robinson III regarding their NBA futures. John Horford caught, I think, some of us by surprise with his transfer announcement. So all of a sudden, if all of those things happen, well, we know John's gone, but if all three of the other guys go, all of a sudden we're looking at a very different and even younger team than we thought Michigan would field next season, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it was a similar situation to last year. I guess Robinson and McGarry had stayed. I do think that they're in a better spot, though, now than they were. I think that, let's say, just for the sake of argument, that all three of those sophomores leave, Stauskas, McGarry, and Robinson. That still leaves you with, and the fact that John is gone as well doesn't help anything, but that still leaves you with Karis LeVert, Derek Walton, and Zach Irvin as a core of your team. I think all three of those players, given a strong offseason, which we saw what Karis was able to do last offseason, I can't imagine what he'll be able to do again. I mean, I'm sure he can make another leap there, and I'm sure Derek Walton and Zach Irvin can make even bigger leaps from year one to year two. So, given the track record Beeline's had with taking guys as freshmen and turning them into much, much better players as sophomores, I think that you've got a lot of talent in those three guys to have a very, very effective offense. The one, I guess, biggest concern to me would be if all three of those guys leave, you've lost John Horford now, and you've lost depth in the middle. You're going to have to ask Mark Donnell to play an awful lot as a redshirt freshman, and really, I think you might even have to go and at least look at maybe adding someone late, or maybe even adding a grad transfer or something like that if indeed Mitch decides to leave, because your depth there would be Mark Donnell, Max Bielfeldt, and then Ricky Doyle would be an incoming freshman who, by all accounts that I've heard, probably needs a redshirt year himself. So you're going to, if Mitch does in fact go, you probably are going to have to add somebody in the middle for further depth's sake. But at the same time, I don't think it'd be a disaster. I think this will still be a quality team. I think it still would be a tournament team, and one that maybe not pushing for a Big Ten title, but I think a team that could certainly be in the tournament and certainly win a few games in the tournament, given how Beeline coaches offense.
Well, it'll certainly help that if the three sophomores go, and again, we know John's gone, the fact that the team gets to go to Europe this year and gets, I think, 10 extra practices in. Yeah, that will help greatly, too. Yeah,
that'd be huge. I mean, especially for a guy like Donnell, I think, and even maybe Zach Irvin, guys that are in different roles. I think they go over there and I think they even play pro teams. So I think they play real competition over there on these European trips. I think they play 10 games or something like that over there. So I think that'd be gigantic for them, especially at this time. If they lost all those guys and had new guys coming in, that would be a huge, huge benefit and a huge head start, and one that would come at a perfect time.
Our guest here on our Michigan Game Day segment this week has been Michigan football beat writer Nick Baumgardner from Mlive. And Nick, I'm sure there'll be news popping up before summer practice starts in August. So as always, we appreciate the time you take, and we will get back to you if there's anything we need to talk about.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
We received a fan feedback call this week from Don Katrell, who is a big Michigan fan living down in the Cincinnati area. He has some thoughts on Coach Brady, Hoke, and the handling of the Brendan Gibbons affair.
Hi, Mike. This is Don Katrell, actually out of Williamsburg, Ohio. I do have a YouTube channel. It's called the Don Katrell Report, Katrell. And basically, I have been a Michigan fan all my life. Here's the deal. I think there's some stuff going on there in the Michigan administration. The Gibbons thing really set me off. I just, Hoke did a great job the first, 2 or 3 years, and now this, it's to the point now, something has to be said, something has to be done. I want him out, actually. He came in with a, kind of a gunslinger mentality, accountability, basically. But the Virginia Tech win, that was great in the bowl games. But, I was kind of looking at his record. Honestly, it's not that great. Ball State, San Diego State, it's not all that, And what's sad is to see Rich Rod doing well in Arizona. That's the sad thing.
Thanks again to Don Katrell from down in the Cincinnati area for giving our listener line a call this week. You too can weigh in with any of your maize and blue opinions by calling 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. The listener line is open 24/7. I just ask that you tell us who you are, where you're calling from, keep it clean, and then give us any of your thoughts or maize and blue opinions. You can also email us at the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. Come on, Wolverine fans, I would love to hear from you. Michigan fan feedback anytime, 24/7. Coming up next on Wolverine Quick Hits, Michigan softball keeps rolling along, and Michigan men's gymnastics claims back-to-back national championships. That's right here on the Michigan Man Podcast, here on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the word perfect is almost never mentioned in gymnastics, a sport that adheres countless deductions to the smallest of errors. But the Michigan men's gymnastics team's performance Friday night came pretty darn close. After finishing the regular season undefeated and then winning the Big Ten championship, the second-ranked Wolverines wrapped up their perfect season by winning the national championship with a score of 445.050. Competing at home in the Chrysler Center, Michigan edged out second-place Oklahoma and third-place Stanford to reach the pinnacle of collegiate gymnastics for a second straight year. The Wolverines earned their first repeat national championship in school history since the trampoline program did so in 1969-1970. Friday also marked the third championship in 5 years for Michigan and its sixth all-time. It just doesn't get any better than winning it at home, said Michigan coach Kurt Golder, and this is my fourth one, and they are all great, but winning it in front of a Michigan crowd in Chrysler Center, and then it being a repeat, it just makes it all the sweeter. I couldn't ask for anything more. In addition to winning back-to-back team championships, senior Sam Mikulik also took back-to-back all-around titles with a total score of 91.10. Mikulik had the highest score in 3 out of the 6 events on the night, highlighted by his performances on parallel bars and floor exercise. So congratulations again to Michigan men's gymnastics on their national championship, back-to-back national championships, and Coach Kurt Golder. In softball news, pitchers Megan Betza and Haley Wagner combined on a 5-hit shutout last Sunday and were backstopped by a 14-run outburst, including a 10-run 7th inning in a 14-0 win in the series finale against Michigan State in East Lansing. In the 3-game series with the Spartans, Wagner, Betza, and junior Sarah Driesinga yielded just 1 run on 13 hits across 17 innings. In 12 Big Ten games, the U of M pitching staff has an earned run average of 0.91, and opponents are hitting only 186. Betza tossed 6 innings, striking out 4. She was most effective in the 4th inning when it took just 6 pitches to set down the Spartans in order. The game was tight for the first 6 innings. Sophomore Sierra Lawrence popped a 3-run homer on a 1-2 pitch to get Michigan's offense going in the 3rd, and U of M added a fourth run on an MSU error in the fifth. The floodgates opened in the seventh when the Maize and Blue scored 10 runs on 9 hits and 2 Michigan State errors. Junior Lauren Sweet and freshman Lindsay Montemorano hit back-to-back home runs. Later in the inning, following an MSU error that extended the frame, Driesinger hit a pinch hit grand slam. Sweet and freshman Kelly Christner each had 2 hits in the seventh inning. Lawrence and fellow sophomore Sierra Romero each added a run-scoring single. Wagner closed out the game throwing 1 inning of relief. Betza earned her 9th win of the season. She's 9-3 overall. And Michigan extended its winning streak to 19 games. The Maize and Blue will stay on the road for a single game against Central Michigan, which will take place midweek Wednesday in Mount Pleasant. First pitch is scheduled for 4 p.m. They will be taking the Easter weekend off, as will Michigan men's baseball. Baseball in action with a home-and-home midweek against Eastern Michigan. Michigan softball, though, rated number 5 heading into this week's action with an overall record of 33-6, a perfect 12-0 in the Big Ten. Even though we're headed into that quiet time of the year for Michigan athletics, there is still plenty to look forward to and to talk about. That's what we do every day, all year, here at GBM Wolverine. Visit www.GBM Wolverine and sign up for free membership today. You'll get emails when a story is published, and you'll have access to our very active message board. Just because it's spring, almost anyway, doesn't mean we're going away. Stay in the Wolverine loop this spring and summer by becoming a member. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up today. Remember to like us on Facebook at The Michigan Man Podcast and follow us on Twitter at The Michigan Man. The show app is available in the iTunes Store, the Android Store at Amazon.com, and the Windows 8 App Store. You can also listen to us with 2 easy-to-use free apps, TuneIn Radio and Stitcher Radio on demand. You can also listen from your laptop or desktop by visiting our site at www.themichiganmanpodcast.com. There is always plenty of Wolverine news to talk about, so make sure you get one of those apps and stay with us all spring and summer. Thanks to my guest today, football beat writer Nick Baumgardner from Mlive. Always great to have Nick on. He does such an outstanding job covering Michigan football. So check out his daily coverage at mlive.com, or you can download their great U of M football app from iTunes or the Android store at amazon.com. Earlier this year, I told you we'd try and do at least one football recruiting update each month. So next week, we'll try and get one of our Wolverine recruiting gurus on and see what's happening with the class of 2015 and beyond. So I hope you'll be back next week for that. That will do it for this week's show. I wish each and every one of you a blessed and happy Easter and a great Wolverine week. Until next time, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, everyone, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!